Okay. Hello, everyone.
Hi,
Hi guys.
guys.
So, a lot of you don't know, you we're all talking about the weather, and I was wondering, wow, is the conversation that we're having not really all that interesting?
Yeah, like
And
people don't seem
indeed,
to.
it is interesting, but we weren't live. So, to catch you all up,
Yeah.
I just wanted to welcome the wonderful Derek Galanis back. He is an author of two books. The one that's most relevant to our audience here today is Greed and Fear, the Galanis Family Crime. I will show you what that looks like on Amazon.com. I'll point out that it is on sale on Kindle, so if you want to pick it up right now, go for it. You can get it immediately, or you can get a paperback version or a used version, whatever your heart desires. So I have the link in the description, and you can purchase it and read all about it. But we have the benefit of having him here today, and he's very thoughtfully going to explain. What white collar crime is. He has already explained to us that it's not as complicated as a lot of us think, but I'll admit, whenever someone starts talking about math and numbers, I automatically assume it's out of my breadth of ability to understand, and so my mind tunes out. So I am very excited to learn here today. I super appreciate you taking the time to be with us and to chat with us
Again.
for 15 minutes
Yeah. I
before
want
even going live.
I want to add Derek also has another book out called Warrior of Light, and
Yes.
anybody, and you can just put that out there real quick. I know it's not the same topic, but nevertheless, I think it's really important. I think it's very useful. And go ahead, you can talk.
If you guys have any mixed martial arts fans out there, Warrior of the Light is very relevant reading.
Great. Yes. And we were so happy that you were here, Derek, and meeting with us again. And look forward to many more of your TikToks as well. You do an amazing job trying to educate people on the dangers and of the financial new crime wave of financial fraud and how it intertwines with society, as a whole. So we really appreciate you and have a lot of respect for what you do. Sorry about that. And with that,
I did want to ask, Derek, what are your like your TikTok and your Twitter handles? I'm
Oh
just gonna put it in the
wow,
chat here.
wow, that's a trick question. Okay, I think TikTok is at symbol Derek Meyer Galanis, and I think my Instagram is at symbol Derek Galanis. I believe.
Okay. If
And
you
then my
search,
Twitter. Go ahead.
yeah, I was
And
just
my
gonna say, if you search Derek Galanis, you'll find the TikToks. You'll find,
yeah.
Google is fantastic in that way. But he is tweeting all the time, sharing information. You can ask questions and he responds. It's awesome. And
you're so
what
well
a great,
spoken. I'm so
uh,
impressed. We
and
have a
that's
lot
the
of respect
thing.
for what you do.
Yeah, I was saying before, our interview with you, Derek, was one of the most watched interviews, and it's for good reason. I think a lot of this, what Don and I are uncovering, is like, wow, this goes deep. And
Hmm.
even if a lot of these schemes, whether they're Ponzi schemes or something else, maybe they're stepping on the line of the law, who knows? But regardless of whether or not they're directly related to Heidi's disappearance, I think this is turning over the underbelly of kind of what's happening in the world today, where, yes, of course, we're going to still have those typical people who look like, they're part of crime, they're gangsters or whatever, but there's going to be a whole lot of people who have a lot of money, are connected to a lot of people with a lot of power who are engaging in these same criminal type activities, who deserve to also, be charged or be fined, or whatever it may be. So we need to continue focusing on that. And I think, interviewing with you is another step to lighting the fire to the police, or really spotlighting the fact that this is where crime seems to be going.
Yeah,
I,
and
I, I
say
hope
so they can
so.
avoid it. Yeah.
I got to tell you one thing. that was my father's excuse, the line. They all talk about the line. By the way, all these underground financiers, Jason Sugarman, my brother Jason Galanis, my father, they talk about a line. I can tell you there is no line in where they're coloring. They are absolutely committing a crime. They're using the fact that we have normal regulations to pretend like they're in legitimate business. But there is no line. I mean, they are so far outside the lines, coloring their own pictures that, that's kind of a misnomer. But they want everyone to think that. And why? Because they have a chance of going to trial. They can plead to the audience. They're all very charismatic. Look at me. I really didn't do anything. It's all a farce. I mean, they are straight criminals.
Well, and like as you were saying, they also deal with a lot of newer issues like cryptocurrency and what you're saying, CBD, the
Cannabis, marijuana.
cannabis industry, where laws have not been actually, many laws have not been created, many lines have not been drawn yet, and what causes the people to intersect and make those lines and laws. It's when people overstep them. So actually, they're kind of creating their own boundary because of the new, the new aspects of these industries.
Well, let's talk about that. I mean, look, anything that takes off, right, generally doesn't have boundaries because it's generally new. Let's talk about, Facebook, right? And the privacy issues and what they can do. Let's talk about MMA, right? In the beginning, it was human cockfighting, and John McCain almost had it banned. And then they followed the guidelines and they got themselves to where they are. Crypto. I mean, at first, people were saying, is this really real? Marijuana, CBD is another one. So all of them, when there's a big breakout like that, it is by definition unregulated, right? But that's where the animal spirits, they call it in finance, that's where the emotion lies. Everybody thinks if I get involved in this, I'm going to be a millionaire. And that's the trick they use to rob those money managers we talked about off the air. But yeah,
we're going to want to talk about that again to clear, because that is
what's
actually,
a money manager,
right? So let's just start with some pointed questions. We're going to start from question 1 again, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
Okay, so you have spoken on the subject of the new elite financial giants that have become the present day historical organized crime. Can you define for our viewers what exactly that means?
Sure. So the juxtaposition I give is that, the mafia's biggest win was taking over union-run pension funds. They would make their way into the union through generally the workers. A lot of their members were workers in unions. They would get elected to positions, and little by little, like those guys would do. And by the way, a lot of times with charm before any threats of violence, just like Sugarman and Jason Galanis, they get their way in there. And before they know it, they say, look, we're going to make these investments in the pension fund. And if they're in any way pushed back, they take what they want. They go to those huge union pension funds worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and they can allocate investments into areas they want. Now, obviously, we're in different times now. But for instance, if a mafioso had a crypto business that he wanted to rob, he could take $5 million from his union-run pension fund, put it in his crypto business, and his family's eating off that. I mean, the crypto business might go bankrupt, but it doesn't matter. It looks like he made a legitimate investment with his union's pension fund money.
So is this basically a present day money laundering type of situation
So, I mean, look, so money laundering, the feds catch such a wide net with that at this point. I don't want to comment on what so any crime that involves, money can be construed as money laundering, certainly. But the reality is what they're doing is they're taking funds that are managed for people's retirement and they're putting them into bogus investments. They are then robbing those bogus investments to meet their own personal needs. And, you've read the articles on Sugarman and my brother. That's exactly what they did. They got money in from investors, and then they spent it on their own lavish lifestyles. I mean, that's what they do. That was what the mafia was doing with the pension funds. And one of the reasons I don't make the juxtaposition just because of the pension funds and the money manager scam. I also make it because the old school mafiosos, the Gambino crime family, for example, are involved in these crimes now. They're no longer breaking legs or anything else. They get guys like Sugarman, they get guys like my brother to front for them, and they get in there and they get money the same way they used to with the pension funds. Albeit, of course, maybe they're buying a money manager. But we can talk about that further on. Buying a money manager that might have
Mm.
hundreds of millions of dollars under management is actually pretty cheap.
What now? Could
In
you
the
define
grand
exactly
scheme.
what a money manager is in this situation?
Sure. So
In this respect.
in this day and age, they're usually termed registered investment advisors. Anyone can become one. Obviously, firms like Merrill Lynch have registered investment advisors, but anybody can take a Rule 65. It's a very simple test. I consider it like the driving test of finance. Anyone can get it. All you got to do is read the book. Once you get that Rule 65, you can hang a shingle and you go out there and you need to raise money. You go and say, look, I have this finance degree. I think I can do a good job with your retirement. And you go around raising money. And there are literally about 10,000 of these independent managers in the United States running around. And they are all vulnerable to guys like Jason Sugarman and Jason Galanis. And I can explain why if you'd like.
Definitely. I have a question. So
Sure.
you mentioned they're no longer breaking legs. Does the breaking legs part ever come into play at some point? Like, do they use that as kind of a backup if something doesn't go to plan?
So, yeah, now it depends on the person, right? Me and my brother Jason grew up with Tommy and Tony Gambino. Both our fathers were in FCI Terminal Island in Long Beach, where ironically my father and my brother live today as well. Um, in prison with my father back then was Rosario Gambino. Rosario was a high level mafioso. We grew up with his sons. I would say to you that, yeah, they will throw a threat out there, but will they actually do anything? Probably not. Why? Because they're too sophisticated at this point. They know that as soon as they cross that line, the dollars to jail time is no longer a good equation. Guys like
Yeah.
Sugarman and my brother, if they plead out, I mean, you've seen my brother was the only one who got really substantial time on the case. Bevan Cooney, who's been committing crimes with us for years, all in my book, got 3 years. Devin Archer, Hunter
Yeah,
Biden's best
we're
friend.
gonna go back to Archer.
Yeah. By the
Yeah,
way, Archer just had his sentencing
I
date put
know.
off again, February
Yep.
28th. Now, by the way, he's got nothing to fear. I mean, this judge, Ronnie Abrams, loves handsome, preppy men, and Archer was an Abercrombie and Finch model.
Ugh, there we
He's.
go.
I'm sure he's going to get probation. To be honest with you, she
Yeah,
was
we're
an
gonna get. We
Obama
have some
appointee.
questions about Archer and the
Sure.
continuation of the sentencing or his case, and as well as we're gonna touch on Morton if you don't mind too.
Yeah, of
But
course.
Okay.
I wanted to talk about unions for a second
Yeah.
because even if you buy the money manager of this union, don't the union reps need to vote? Are they
Okay.
being given some tips or something?
So this is where the scam bifurcates and changes. So the mafiosos needed the unions. Why? Because their connection is through the labor. Their connection is through the street people, so to speak. They get in there and then they make their way to the pension funds. For slick guys like Jason Sugarman and Jason Galanis, all these money managers we talked about are out there to be bought. They don't have to deal with unions at all. All they have to do is find some guy who's worked his butt off. He's got $100 million under management. And by the way, a regular run-of-the-mill registered investment advisor, RIA, who's got about $100 million under management will make about $1 million a year. So when a guy like Sugarman or my brother show up and say, hey, guess what? We can make you $2 million on your portfolio right now. All you've got to do is invest in our crypto. It is very enticing. Suddenly your income for that year triples.
And
Wow.
who is the person who's then questioned by the IRA Is it the money manager? So they're taking on the liability at that
It
point?
is all the money managed. But so with these underground financiers, everything is charm and guile. They want the other guy to sort of suspect that's what's going on. But they're great pitchmen. They talk about how cryptocurrency is going to be the future and we're
Hmm.
not going to have paper money anymore and governments won't be able to control interest rates because everything's crypto and you really want to be in this. Oh, and by the way, Johnny, I'm going to give you a 20% commission on this 10 million you're going to give me.
Hmm.
So you got all this good rationalization. This stuff you can sell your clients on. And then you're thinking, wow, I just tripled what I make in a year. Now, these guys don't realize and don't think like this Sugarman guy, if he rips me off, the dominoes are going to fall on me too. They don't think that far ahead. There's too much greed going on in their mind. And probably if they did think about it, they would steer clear. And that's the game for those guys. They're in a position of trust. They've got a lot of money under management. And that's why guys like Jason Sugarman and Jason Galanis are attacking you.
Wow.
Wow. Because that, you know, my mind is spinning because I found a company, a gaming. It's not a gaming company, but it's an online. It's pretty popular amongst like children. But was watching their 3 hour presentation, and they were talking all about how they want to start selling crypto. So instead of using money, you would use crypto within the game community, and it was like this something crazy, like 47 or 63 billion dollar evaluation. And I'm thinking, like, how is that even possible? So it's really interesting that you bring up crypto and gaming all in one go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But,
Well, listen, guys, you know what just happened to Elizabeth Holmes, right? I
Yeah.
mean, we're talking about a girl who raised money based on essentially an idea, a
mhm.
concept. You know, I'm not making her exactly like Sugarman. I think she had a real dream that she believed in, but when she got halfway there, she realized how hard it was. But then she also realized, wow, I've got Henry Kissinger on my board. What am I going to do? Stop raising money? Stop trying?
Right.
I'm not going to do that. I'm going to keep going. And you know that's the trap. Like, how do you compare a guy like Jason Sugarman, who's a complete thief, Jason Galanis, the thief, with Elizabeth Holmes? It's very difficult. You know, she fell into that position, and
Yeah.
then she didn't take the right actions once she was there. But does that make her any less culpable? I don't know.
Well,
I guess
and
it
that
all has to
sounds
do
really
with,
familiar right now, doesn't it?
yeah.
Hearing that.
And I guess the difference is, for me at least, when thinking about these two different personalities, did Elizabeth go in with the intention of frauding people out of money, or did she get ahead of herself and maybe realized halfway through, my goodness, what I've been talking about maybe isn't viable, but wow, all these powerful and rich people have donated to me. I have to keep going and pretend as though I know what I'm doing, compared to Jason Sugarman, which having connections to your family and knowing the ins and outs of white collar crime, like to me, it's just, maybe on paper, maybe from the views of the law, it maybe is the same, but intention for me is everything.
You know, Matt Mal, you said it. Like, unfortunately, with the law, it is very difficult because how do you get inside someone's head, right? And then you
Hmm.
take the next step.
Intent.
Like
Yeah.
Sonny Balwani was essentially a stock promoter, right? That got real lucky during, I think, the .com craze, and that was her sort of mentor boyfriend. And so, where do you split the difference? When do you say, well, you know, Jason Galanis is a born criminal, and but Elizabeth Holmes was really trying, and it's very difficult, right? Elizabeth was
Hmm.
very young,
Yeah.
so then you've got the whole how old are they playing into that too? And I don't know how you separate that difference, and I think that's why the law doesn't try to separate that difference.
So, okay. So, in your opinion, now let's correlate this with Heidi's situation just for a second. So, what in your opinion would the significance be of Heidi's name being on still 9 active LLCs as well as her address? And before she went missing, what would have been the significance? And now that she is missing, what is the significance? Are they going to scramble to do something about it? Does it even matter? I mean, what weight does that actually have?
So it's interesting. So I played Heidi's role for a long time before obviously my first criminal conviction. After that, I'm not useful as a straw man, right? Like, if somebody has a felony, that brings bad reputation to whatever you're trying to promote. So I was removed from that role. But before that, that is a function I played for my family. And, since, I was a relation, that was perfect. That's what they wanted. Now, let me say this. I understand how Heidi felt because they all make you feel like you're doing something very important for them. But at the same time, they're doing something very important to you. We all know Heidi was living above her means. And that's one of the levers that guys like Sugarman, my father, will use. Well, Derek, you're getting 10, like throughout my scam with
You
Grover that
owe
I went to
us now,
jail
yeah.
for, I was making $10,000 a month. Well, where was I going to make $10,000 a month with anybody else? Now, forget the fact, what people don't realize, especially me, is, well, you might be making $10,000 a month, but you're going to go to jail for 8 to 10 years when they send you the deal. Is $10,000 a month worth 8 to 10 years? No, not even close. And I think, around this time, Heidi, and what's extremely suspicious, is
Yes.
Heidi was starting to realize her culpability. Wait a minute, I'm the straw man on all these companies. I've been doing this. So, and then she's getting nervous, and then poof, she disappears.
Right.
Now, listen, ordinarily, I would say a guy like Sugarman would not have the moxie to do something like that. But, Sugarman had a different place in society than my father and my brother. My father and my brother, everybody knew what they were, right? Sugarman was hiding within the veneer of society, just like Hunter Biden is doing, just like Devin Archer is doing. So he's got, quote unquote, a lot more to lose. Would that drive him to murder? I don't know. I mean, we're going to find out, I hope.
Well, and it also puts him in the spotlight. So what's your take on that?
Well, so yeah, it does. But if Heidi Plank starts talking, he feels that's a spotlight too, right? That's the
Right.
spotlight he's trying to avoid. So now it looks ultra suspicious. And by the way, until I read the LA magazine, and I think you guys had said it, but it
Yeah.
didn't resonate, I didn't realize that Sugarman dropped off those muffins or whatever when he knew she
Pastries.
was. Yeah, and by the way, before I even knew that, knowing what I know about those personalities, I said he did that to make it look
Yeah.
like he was just concerned and he has no idea. And then I find out he already knew she was missing. It makes it
Yeah.
even more suspicious.
He left the car door open. He didn't
He
wait
tried
for
the
her to
door
answer the
before he
phone.
dropped those off. He didn't ring the doorbell. He tried
No.
the door knob.
He knew.
And so I was just going to ask. So we know that Heidi was living well. She was helping out friends with, bringing them on trips and stuff like that. She, had a really nice Range Rover. Her rent was something like $6,000 a month, just a single woman. And it was owned by Helms Avenue LLC, which was funded by the Bank of California. Like there are all these like threads of ties of like how do you keep someone locked in that sort of position. You make sure that their expenses, they're used to living lavishly. And so I can understand like feeling really freaked out, realizing, oh my gosh, look how deep I am. And we know that leading up to her disappearance, she was really concerned about, the tax. She had some tax liens on her.
A lot.
A lot.
Of
Like what?
taxes.
I can't remember what
Close to it. Well, now we started out with 1,000, 100,000. Now we're up to over 300,000. We found.
Yeah, no, guys, this is how they do it. They bring somebody in, and little by little they build them up. Like I'm sure Heidi didn't start out in a home like that, right? She got there over time as trust developed. But then when she realized, wait a minute, we're in trouble here. Guys like Sugarman resent that. Look what all I've done for you, and now you're worried about yourself. And
Exactly.
they're unable to separate that because sociopaths like Sugarman, like my father and brother, they don't have empathy. So they don't see it from Heidi's perspective. I can tell you right now, I've got enough contact in the prisons. My brother and my father hate me. They don't see it from my perspective. Like I went to jail for 11 years for you guys and you ripped me off. They don't see that. They're not capable of it. And I guarantee you, what we know about how Sugarman reacted when she disappeared, All he was worried about was that computer,
That
right?
computer. He was just wanted the laptop.
That's it. And then he makes the unbelievable claim that we think Heidi was stealing money from us.
And
Please.
Oh
that I'm
my
not
gosh,
laughing because I think it's
siphoning
funny.
money.
I'm
It's
laughing because that is
insane.
it's so ridiculous.
So,
So
my question, sorry, I know I keep interjecting because I just have a burning. Hypothetically, we don't know what's happened to her. The landfill search is off. They're now focusing their questioning finally on the remaining residents and people who moved out from the Hope and Flower. Should have done that from the get-go.
right.
We
Um,
talked about
but
that.
well, and we will. But what would be the benefit? Let's just say that they are um, directly responsible for her disappearance. We don't know what would be the benefit of having her disappear, given so many other people, I would assume, already know all this information.
And her name and address are still on those. They haven't been removed off 9 of them. So, I that confuses
Well,
us.
guys, remember something. We don't know what discussions Jason Sugarman had with Heidi. We
True.
don't know if they were intimate. There's a lot of things we don't know. Did Heidi, and I know we haven't really touched on it yet, the money manager scam, but did Heidi know exactly what the Burnham roll up was? These guys like to brag too. They like to talk about how smart they are and how clever they are. Did Jason Sugarman let that slip to her? This is what we're doing, and Hunter Biden's involved. I mean, which he is. There's emails where my brother,
Yeah.
Jason Sugarman, and Hunter Biden are all CC'd together. They're all talking. So,
Yeah.
we don't know what he said. We don't know what Heidi knew. I would the companies and the LLCs and whatnot and those things. I just that look Heidi looked at that for her liability. My guess that's what shook her a little bit. But we don't know what she actually knew. And her husband said she knows where all the bones, the bodies are buried. What does that mean? That means
Right.
Heidi probably intimated something to her ex. Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. Yeah, I mean, that gives us a really good, or gives me at least a good perception. If that is the situation, it makes a lot more sense, to me at least. And that actually covers a couple questions right there that I had. So the fact that, in your opinion, did Heidi have access? Like you said, we don't know what she knew, but in her position with Sugarman, and the company itself, do you think that she would have had access to all those emails before they came out blasted, which was after she went missing? Do you think she would have known about those things? And there's a reason he wants her laptop. Is a quick question about Burnham. So, are you aware of, or do you know if they are still in business? Because I happened to be going down. I happened to have gone down to one of the buildings that one of Sugarman's companies is registered to down here in Newport Beach. And I have the screenshot, but I didn't put it in. I'm sorry. And it happens to be in the same building as the sign says Burnham Investments is also on there. So it blows my mind how that could still be in business if it's the same thing. Are they still actively doing or working and doing this and investing people's
Listen,
money?
no, Don, look, I'm quite certain that nobody is giving Jason Sugarman money right now. Okay?
Maybe not this
Yeah.
moment, right?
Quick
Yeah, I
Google.
mean,
Yeah.
maybe his father-in-law, if he's lucky, to support his daughter. But nobody outside is giving Jason Sugarman money. There's too much there. As far as the emails and the computer go, I don't think that Heidi had access to those. But more important to the point, who's had access to those for about 6-7 years? The FBI. You know who's done nothing with them for about 6-7 years? The FBI. Why? We know why. Because
Do you
the
know
son of the president
the
is
FBI
involved.
the FBI isn't even on Heidi's case. And that's another thing
Right.
that blows my mind. Why? She's a missing person and
Very confusing.
very, very confused. So many questions about that. It's beyond my understanding.
And
Well,
so,
guys,
like,
oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, that leads me to another concern that I have is, according to some good, like, people that I trust who seem to know what they're talking about, there have been a lot of crimes that have been reported to the police but never officially recorded. So, in the Hope and Flower building specifically. I myself have tried calling the LAPD. They didn't know who Heidi was, didn't seem to be taking any notes. And we sent, a bunch of information to the police yesterday, which was very well documented and professionally written, I must say. Yes, Dawn, that was
Very
great.
well done, Don.
Well done. But my concern is that going to go anywhere? Because we know that they haven't recorded all of the previous illegal activity in the building, and I have a
I want to
lot
ask
of
my question.
suspect.
I want to
Yeah.
ask my
Okay.
question then. You're leading up to it.
Okay. Well, there you go. Great minds.
This is my big question of the night. What is Ani's connection, if you know, or what could be, to Ani, who's also
Real estate.
right? Ani is also known in your neck of the woods as a mafia family,
Wannabe mafia.
wannabe mafia.
They're connected to the Hells Angels, at
So
least in some reports here.
what there seems to be a lot of things going on in that building and a lot of cover-ups, not just with this but with other crimes as well that are happening and have been happening, as well as even the building of the towers there of Hope and Flower. They had politicians banter for them to get it built in the first place. They had ordinances changed just to get those built. That much power to do that with our local politicians, and that right there blows my mind. But in reference to Jason Sugarman or his associates, close associates, what is that connection? Or
Well,
how would that connection work if
okay, so let me,
it was?
sorry, this is going to fizzle a little bit. I don't have any knowledge specifically about them. I
About that
wasn't
type of
in LA.
situation.
Yeah, that wasn't, but let's talk a little bit about where it was leading up and it went to that. When powerful people are involved in a case, things move differently. Let's give the example, Jeffrey Epstein, right? I mean, 20 years ago, people went and said, hey, this guy's molesting girls. And then what? They work out some sweetheart deal. Now, why did they do that? I think the U.S. attorney was Acosta. They do it because there's millions and millions of dollars to be made. Acosta doesn't want to throw Epstein in jail. Acosta wants to figure out, how can I make sort of a deal out of this? The best lawyers in the world, Dershowitz, come down and talk about it. Are we seeing the same thing here with Heidi and Jason, right? Because you're talking about just as high profile people. As far as I'm concerned, honestly, the Cougars connection to Sugarman, they're bigger than Epstein was.
Well,
So
they partied with Epstein. Like, we know
We
that
have
they,
pictures of
yeah,
them in this
of
in
them
the
with
same
Maxwell,
social setting,
yeah,
sitting next to each
Ghislaine.
other, laughing. We
and
have
that is
lots.
because this elite, the criminal elite and the elites all fraternize together, right? This is one big circle. And listen, they're all always robbing each other too. But people with enough money like Epstein can literally buy themselves justice. Now, of course, I know that all came back and Acosta had to step down, as I think Trump appointed him labor secretary or something. But for a long time it worked. Is that what's going on with Heidi? I'm equally confused that the
Well,
feds don't want to know where Heidi is. Why are we let me say this, and I'm not saying I know the inside of police work, I don't. But if you're going to let the LAPD handle something of this magnitude, it's kind of like saying, well, let's let the rookies do it.
yeah.
And because the feds, they know how to solve this stuff. They know how to crack it real easy.
Well, and
Go ahead.
So when do
locally,
the feds become involved? When? Like, when would that happen? How big does the case need to be for the FBI
And
to
that's-
be involved?
locally here we had Jose Huizar, who is that is a federal case, and he was involved in the whole deal that got Ani approved to build there. And I don't know if you know about him, but I mean that's a huge federal case right now. He's got something like 18 federal or charges for money laundering, for racketeering.
Yeah, so here's the thing, my personal opinion. We've seen how they've handled the case with Hunter Biden, right? They've just left Hunter off and they've let his lawyer claim he had nothing to do with it. Now, those emails prove otherwise, right? Hunter was right in the mix of that thing. But everything is the view of how you want to view it. And let's go back to our Epstein example. I mean, I can imagine the things Dershowitz was saying about those young girls. Yeah, but she's from a bad family, this and that. You manipulate the minds. And by the way, just like those money managers we talked about, when Sugarman shows up and say, I've got a zeitgeist deal of cryptocurrency, all you got to give me is 10 million, I'll give you 20% commission. Suddenly people want to believe. So you use the imprimatur of, yeah, this sounds really good. This is really what's going on. But the reality is there's other motivations. Why the feds aren't involved in Heidi's disappearance, I have no idea. I mean, I'm sure they could figure it out pretty quick, unless maybe they don't want to know. They don't
Or they
want
do know,
to
and they're doing the same thing as sweeping it under.
Yeah, they don't want. Look, do you think that they want Hunter Biden in headlines with Jason Sugarman and Jason Galanis and John Galanis, Gambino crime family, and a dead body? No, of course it would destroy a presidency. So we're talking about the highest levels of things going on. And by the way, we didn't even mention the Goober family there, right? We're
Right.
speaking with the Bidens. So it reeks all around. It's in plain sight. I mean, very few people, thank God for you guys, are actually out there trying to give this some publicity. And by the way, it's tragic that it took Heidi's disappearance to actually shine a light on all this stuff,
Yeah.
because they're committing crimes before that, and they're
So many
letting
people have been hurt financially already. Their whole
yeah,
lives have been
yeah.
destroyed.
Absolutely. And listen, if I can let people know what these underground financiers are, my comparison to what the pension funds and the mafia was my effort to show people, hey, the crimes really haven't changed. This is exactly the same stuff. And I don't I it gets me tired for hearing people say, well, that's too complicated. Nobody said it was complicated when the mafia was misappropriating pension fund stuff. But now because Hunter Biden is involved and Jason Sugarman, it's too complicated. Why? Because they're charming sociopaths? You know,
Well, and I think that throwing Hunter Biden's name in got them a lot of people that wanted to put their money into it. You could
Well,
put a
I
name
mean,
like Biden's on
but
there.
exactly. Biden trustworthy. Yes, I'm gonna do
Yeah.
that. I mean, I would hear that like and invest if I knew nothing about like I know nothing
Yeah.
about investing. I hear someone says like, "Oh, GameStop, like you should buy that whatever, the stock." Okay, like
Don't
I'll
even
do
go to
that. I don't even
don't even go
know.
to AMC because I'm just kidding.
I have
I'm
no
holding
idea.
mine still. Like an idiot.
Everything I've invested in personally, I've lost money on. Everything that somebody else has invested in that they say it should be good, I've gained money on. Now, these are pennies or nothing compared to what's happening here. But my question is there anything else that's ever used uh, beyond outside of money to bargain? Like I'm just trying to think like Jeffrey Epstein, I think he used women, right? Young women. Is that
Understatement,
something
yeah.
that's common within white collar crime as well, or is it
Well,
really money focused?
that brings me to the Albanian part of you. So you do know
sure,
a lot
sure.
about the sex trafficking.
Sure. So let me say this. Look, all of that culture, and you could even call it a Wall Street culture, right? Is a very sort of masculine culture where they go out there, they drink, they party together, and women are by and large, dehumanized without a doubt. And the question is that what happened to Heidi in this case, right? did Jason feel that way about her? I'm going to say no. I think what Jason felt was that Heidi is mine. I built her. I made Heidi. And I'm sure in Jason's mind, just like my father and my brother's mind with me, you would be nothing without me. And I think that's really where the problem was. Now, listen, among that elite, we already know they all partied together. Obviously, Epstein was around peddling his wares, right? That's what he did. Do I believe that there's a larger conspiracy of that going out there? I really don't. I think that that's taken on some real crazy headlines. There's that whole QAnon movement that believes the Democratic Party is a group of, I don't even want to repeat the claims. Do I believe in that? I do not. But do these things happen? Look, Epstein is living proof, right?
Hmm.
How prevalent
Well,
do you think it is in the U.S. culture right now?
Um, so here's the problem, and I don't want to get too far politically into
Yeah.
this. The U.S. was founded. It's one of the greatest countries in the world, if not the greatest, but founded on Christian values, and therefore we prohibit a lot of things, and we prohibit things, telling people what they can do with their bodies, what they can put into their bodies, and other things. I mean, there's a lot of other countries. I mean, Europe is an example, where a lot of things are legal. Drugs are not a death sentence. You get caught with a bunch of drugs in the United States, you may never see the light of day again. In Europe, you might get 10 years in prison if you were, Pablo Escobar. So there's a big difference in that. So I think the laxer laws in Europe make for, they cater more to human nature. In the United States, because we're restrictive, it perverts it. We have one of the biggest drug problems in the world, right? And the more you try to restrict things that human nature desires, the more it kind of perverts it. And I think that has happened in the United States. I don't want to jump too far into it, and I don't want to say
Yeah.
anything that's going to upset you guys either.
No, I understand. It's good to get your take on it though, because
hmm
Yeah.
picking your brain is very interesting to us, and then make click with
Well,
someone.
listen. So we're talking about Epstein. Like, let's talk about that and just bring it out. A lot of people don't know this, and it's sort of just like marijuana being illegal and it being dangerous. Germany, who's obviously one of the most advanced countries in the world, prostitution is legal. You have a lot of girls from the European Union coming there to make a lot of money. There's a lot of financiers in Germany, just like the United States. I would give that when you have situations like that, you can prevent monsters like Epstein, right?
Yes.
And this is a
hmm
girl's body. She can do with it what she wants to do. I recognize that it is not something that's healthy, but that's something everybody comes to in their own time. Because we're so restricted in the United States, you allow a monster like Epstein to be created. He comes to these girls that don't have that opportunity that they would have in Europe, and he manipulates them and he twists their mind, and that things happen. And that to me is an example of when we try to be preventative, and actually all we do is make a problem worse.
I think that's a really good call out because it is very similar to what happened with marijuana. So before, if you wanted to smoke a joint and, go to bed and have a good sleep and deal with your mental health or whatever it may be, whatever, get the munchies, sleep a bunch. You had to deal with drug dealers who often always, also sold cocaine and, other drugs that like that's a whole
I
other
think that's where it
world.
earned the gateway drug name, just
Yeah,
because of
which is
the street aspect of it.
right. And then when it became legal, finally, okay, we knew that it wasn't going to be laced with anything. It's regulated, it's in stores, it's you so you can trust it. You don't have to go into a potentially dangerous situation. Like I remember people, driving up in the cars and you'd hop in and then drive around the block and like I was not part of that world. But that to me is very scary. So it's the same thing with escorts, with sex work. Once you regulate it, then you provide some safety, some legal safety and ramifications if things were to go wrong. But you're right, it's unregulated, just like crypto-ish. It's getting there. They've created a task force in the SEC just as of October. I think it was like a week or something before or after Heidi went missing. So these it does leave a lot of room for dangerous things to happen.
Now,
Ironically,
without a doubt, guys, and let's talk about this. Let's assume some part of that story about hiding in the building is true, right? If,
sorry,
if no, that's okay. I love
my
dogs.
dog.
If she had been getting pharmaceutical drugs, she would not be dead, presumably, right? It's the problem that there are street drugs that people lace. So the problem isn't dedicated to just one thing or the other, and that's a major issue. And it's kind of funny. Look, we know the drug war is a failure. Everybody in the country knows it, but guess what? We can't stop it. There's too many vested interests. Where would all the DEA people go? Where would all the judges that we have go? Where would everybody go? It's almost like we have an infrastructure too big to fail. So yeah, sorry, I don't mean to get political.
No, you're fine. But
No.
ironically, the reason I think one of the reasons this was brought up is Mo, you and I have uncovered much of this going on in downtown LA, specifically in those buildings. So we're gonna leave that there, but it's present, it's prevalent more than we know.
I saw a meme the other day about the war on drugs, and it's like we've spent X billion dollars and on the war on drugs, and weed won. It's like I can't believe, and I can imagine. I mean, if you're someone who's invested your life savings into something and you're starting to see it dip, it's like, well, I've already checked in. I'm on the ride, so let's just ride it out and see what happens. So you're right. I mean, there's tons of people who are hired for this purpose, and what do? You move them into departments. They have the same, whoops. So they have the same attitude that they did, when they were approaching the war on drugs, which was just terribly, terribly approached. But I wanted to go back to something that you mentioned around ownership. So you were saying that Jason Sugarman, you would feel ownership over Heidi. I built you. I taught you all these tricks, whatever it may be. And now this is speculation, of course. But we know that she was also starting to engage in other companies, other dealings, and these didn't have Jason Sugarman's name on, and we don't know if he was actually involved in the background. Now, we can speculate that perhaps for some of them he was. He may have been the person who introduced them, or they met at a, high-rolling party or something like that. But do you have any experience with somebody who was in, like maybe yourself, who was in Heidi's position and then started to step outside of the family dealings, whether it's blood family or chosen family or business family, and then what happens there?
Yeah, no. So, what I can speak to is the personalities, right? And Sugarman's got a personality exactly like my brother. It's why they were such good friends. It is rage. I wasn't allowed to step out and do anything outside of my family. And believe me, if I tried, they did their best to squash it. So if Heidi did indeed do that, that may have contributed to some of the ire that Sugarman apparently had. So yeah, that's the answer.
That's probably the most important question of the night, right there. That is very, very interesting. Wow.
Yeah, they don't want you to have a life outside of them. That is how they work. And from their perspective, he says, look, I gave you the house, I gave you this, I gave you the job, I've given you everything. And that's just their mindset. My father, that's the way he saw me. You're this useless person except for me. And it seems really strange to me that he would even feel that way. But listen, it's because I'm not a sociopath. So I can't get inside their mind.
Yeah. Wow.
Did you meet a lot of people just in your time? You said you were in prison for 11 years. Were there a lot of people around you who had done similar things? Or was it mostly like what were your connections like in there? Not connections in terms of, go for it. You know what I mean.
Yeah, Mal, I mean, look, the majority, the first time through, we just got done talking about it. Listen, the drug war claims a lot of scalps. So you meet people from all walks of life that are victims of the drug war, right? Guys that thought about doing something, they got caught up on conspiracy. And, it's probably too in-depth to get into on here, but conspiracy laws, as it is in the United States, it's almost impossible to get out of. And by the way, that's what makes it such a joke that Hunter Biden wasn't charged in this case. I can tell you this, that, if it had been anybody else and his name was listed as vice chairman, it wouldn't matter if he knew one thing about the deal. Look, your name's on there, buddy. You're
Yeah.
giving your name credit. And Hunter's even worse, right? Because his name gives prominence, which is why they try to say, oh, he had no idea. Oh, really? He had no idea? He's on the emails? So a lot of victims of the drug war, for sure. I can tell you this. Now the feds have a lot of sex offenders. It didn't used to be that way, but with the internet, that's what's happening. And this goes back to our discussion before. I like to think that we could eliminate a lot of that if the laws were more flexible as far as what adult woman could do with her body. I don't know that to be the case, but I'll tell you what, I'd like to try it, because if it saves one kid's life, it's worth it. What someone who's an adult does, well, that's entirely different. A kid is innocent.
I emphatically agree.
Let me ask, so to round back to the issue of the Burnham case.
Sure.
So the Michelle Morton, I want to specifically ask you about that.
Sure.
Do you feel that her involvement kind of mirrors Heidi in the sense of her amount of involvement, or any type of future charges that would relate to Heidi if she was here? Do they mirror
Yeah,
each other in a way?
I think it's very similar. I think the difference is that Michelle was attempting to become a money manager, right? And Jason used her, my brother. He put her in there, made her think, I believe in you. I believe in what you can do. I'm going to put you in charge of the money manager, right? And that's exactly what he did. Jason bought the money manager, and maybe next time we'll go over how you can buy those. It's really simple, and they're really cheap for what you get. And then she gets hit with the cold reality. Hey, Michelle, you're going to buy my Indian bonds. And here's the thing. I know Michelle she objects to it, and I understand. Imagine this. Imagine you've been given your dream job, but then you get to the dream job and you realize you're part of a criminal conspiracy. It would be very hard to go, okay, now I've got to go to the police. And by the way, this is a little bit like we talked about with Elizabeth Holmes. What was she supposed to do? She got there. She's got $1 billion under management. And what does she say? Like, the science doesn't work? Sorry, Henry Kissinger, I don't need you on my board anymore. And that's the position Michelle was in. Now, Heidi, I think the only difference is Heidi, this is the really suspicious part. Heidi wasn't in a position of Elizabeth or Michelle, right?
Yes.
And so it makes Jason feel like he has total control over her. I gave you your entire life. With Michelle, nobody's going to say, she was a money manager or aspiring money manager before my brother. With Elizabeth Holmes, we already know, Stanford attendee. So, yeah, that's the big difference between all of them. But in the end, the way the sociopath looks at them is very similar, right?
I don't think
Yeah.
Heidi actually knew her level of importance, as far as, I mean, she aside from what Jason, I'm sure, put in her head, I don't think she realized, and I don't know if you'll agree with me, her actual, like, the level of importance she had to him financially.
I do agree with you. And by the way, I was the rare case where, like, I actually knew, right, what I was doing the entire time. I grew up in that life. And here's an interesting little snippet I want to talk to you guys about, because it goes along with what you're saying about Heidi. My brother hired the lawyer I had on my case. His name was Tony Brass. And he did the same thing for his legal secretary before. And the implication is obvious. I'm paying the bill. You make sure Derek doesn't say anything to get me in trouble, right? That's obvious. And Brass comes down to San Diego to see me. And I don't really understand what's going on. But what's going on is Jason has said, I don't really think Derek knows anything. Go down there and interview him and see what he knows. Now, this is an absurd thought. Remember, I protected my brother on the drug case. I've been involved in crimes with them since I was a kid. So it is absurd to think that way, but that's the way these egomaniacs think. So my brother sent the lawyer down there, and after the meeting, my lawyer looked depressed. Ordinarily, you think the lawyer would be happy, right? He can get me a great deal. I can get off. No, the lawyer was depressed because he's getting paid by my brother, and he's got to give my brother the bad news that I can sink him. Now, where was Heidi? Heidi was more naive, right? She didn't know the full aspect of everything. And that's why it probably shocked her more. And I think that's why Jason got angry. Because they feel like, look, well, look what everything I gave you. So, yeah, anyway, I hope that makes sense. And that's the difference between Heidi and me.
I think the other thing, and not to say that this wasn't your situation, but Heidi was doing everything she could to make herself a good life and a good life for her son. Like, we can see that in all the things leading up, is she was doing her darndest to rebuild her life. And this was
a long way in 2 years.
Exactly. Yeah, she did so much to be able to make a life for herself, and then you can see her expanding in all these different businesses, and maybe the new businesses she really wanted to go ahead and not, who knows, do it the right way. But it's just absolutely tragic that she had to be involved.
Yeah,
regardless of who's involved.
I want to be fully clear. I was not living the life like Heidi. I was not, trying to do things positive. I knew I was a criminal and I knew what I was doing. But I'll be honest with you, guys like Sugarman and my brother hate guys like me, because what they really want is someone like Heidi. So when it comes down to it, they don't know as much. They're scared, right? And they're terrified about the situation. None of those things were true with me. I'd already been to prison for my brother. So none of that stuff really terrified me. Heidi and I were definitely in different mental sets, but in similar positions.
I can't even imagine now that you say that, with that, seeing it from that perspective, she must have been terrified when it hit her.
I guarantee you, she's thinking, instead of this life I've built for my sons, I'm going to jail.
Yeah.
And the real tragic part is, I don't think they would have ever punished Heidi very, very, very much at all. But, Sugarman was the one who had the line. Say again.
But she doesn't know that.
No, she doesn't.
She didn't.
No.
Yeah. Wow. Derek, you really give us a lot of insight into that world and into what Heidi may have been feeling and thinking, and that means the world to us, I know, but and hopefully to our viewers,
and hopefully to other people who are stepping into this kind of world, and maybe this will raise some red flags for them. Now, we do have some questions from the audience. Tara asks,
somebody was saying they couldn't call in.
Yeah, I'm not sure why the link isn't working, but so please put your question in the chat if the StreamYard link isn't working. But so do you think others have gone missing under certain circumstances within this group of people? So I'm assuming.
Yeah, I know where they're going. So I want to say this. I think it's very rare that someone breaks to the point where they resort to those situations. I don't think my father and brother would have done it. We talked about Sugarman's mindset. Maybe his high place in society is what had him panic and do something like that, if indeed he did. Do I think it's gone on before? Probably not. Are there other situations similar? Well, yeah, of course there are, right? I mean, our criminal courts are filled with them every day of, crazy, insane people that, ran online pharmacies or whatever and landed up killing people. As far as Sugarman making people disappear, I highly doubt it.
Okay, and we have a caller, Allie.
Hi, I'm here.
Hi, Allie.
Here.
Joining.
Oh, where's the rest of me? There I am.
There's
a dog.
Yep, that's Sophie. And I have a golden retriever that sounds like a hound dog in the background. Sorry.
It's okay.
My bulldog was just down here for half an hour.
Yeah, you heard mine barking.
I got another one under my feet. She's little enough not to be seen. And I moved. He's still not out of the camera view, but enough.
Is the StreamYard working for just you, Allie, or is it working for anybody else?
It worked for me when I clicked the link. So let me.
I'll put the link in there again.
Here, let me use
have any
my.
Questions. We have Romeo who said this was an excellent interview. Thank you, Derek.
Thank you.
I also agree, Rachel. Occurrences like this would bring unwanted attention to the company if you're doing some shady things.
See, that's what
Obviously.
I was asking too. So it's where's the line? How does somebody decide which attention is going to be less harmful to your financial future, and to your, because like you
Chloe?
said, no one's giving him money right now.
Well, guys, this goes back to, we don't know what Heidi knew.
Yeah.
We don't know what the relationship truly was between her and Sugarman. Maybe Sugarman was bragging to her. I mean, he probably doesn't brag to his wife about that, right? His wife comes from money, but maybe he brags to Heidi like that. All we can do is guess.
Yeah. Lesser of two evils, I guess, if that's the case. If in fact that's the case. Yeah. Let's see. All right, if no one else is going to call in, I guess I'll just choose some.
I have 2 questions written down.
There you go.
If we have more
Please.
Audience questions, they'll get them in.
No, go for it.
Okay.
You deserve to ask a question too.
So, thank you first so much for coming on with us and going over your knowledge, because your knowledge is indescribably immense from the other side of things.
Sure.
Do you have any specific ideas on how we could go about finding answers in this case?
I think the most important thing is doing what you guys are doing right now, to not let the spotlight go off, because it really looks like, right, the police and the feds do not want to find out the answer, and they're hoping that this passes from the memory of people. I think what you guys are doing is keeping Heidi's memory alive with everybody, and that's all we can do. Not let it go, and then it's some story everybody forgot about, and we just wonder, because that's what they want. They want people to think that Heidi was a junkie, right, or had mental issues, and just forget about it. Who knows what happened to her? No, we have to stay on it until these underground financiers are shown for what they truly are.
Right.
Totally agree.
Thank you.
We were told
You
that
answered my next question by asking my second question first, because I said, how do we catch guys like this? Is it publicity? Is it putting the social pressure on them? And you answered that already, because that's exactly what we need to do. We need to keep things in the spotlight and put the pressure on.
One of the things I always point out is, part of the reason that all of this stuff with Sugarman and my brother and whatnot is swept under is because the elites engage in the same type of crimes. That's why Devin Archer was on the case. That's why Hunter Biden was involved but not charged. I mean, the elites do the same thing. Now, do they do it a little cleaner? Yeah, they know they're breaking the law, but they do it in such a way as nobody would be able to find out. True sociopaths that need to spend as much as they need to spend don't do that. Guys like my father, guys like my brother, that just take it all because they have such an appetite that can never be quenched.
Now, real quick, and that's a great question. One more thing, since you mentioned Archer, what is your take on why that case continues to be put out? The date?
That's the tribal bonds case.
Archer.
I need to look into that, because tribal things are like dear to my heart. Like, I was born on the reservation in North Dakota.
There's a lot to read if you want. But what's your take on the continuations for Archer's case?
Well, let me say this. First of all, about the tribal bonds, guys, it's important to think that was no different than the crypto or the CBD or anything else. And what do I mean by that? Look, with the gaming, reservations have seemed to be a business center, right? And they have a lot of money. So what my brother and father were looking to do was find another way to utilize their sovereign status. And that's what they did by issuing those bonds. But at the end of the day, it was just a way to rip people off, like all of their scams, whether it's crypto or CBDs or anything else. As far as Archer goes, the reason they were forced to charge Archer with the crime is because he did some things for my brother that were very obvious. He paid the coupon on the bond. He paid for my brother's apartment in New York. He did some things out of his own pocket, thinking him and Jason were friends, When the reality is, my brother doesn't have friends. He just uses people. Now, they can leave Hunter off because Hunter never took a direct role like that. Now, if Hunter was a normal person, Hunter would have been in jail too. I mean, his name's is on the offering doc. He raised $5 million from Bohai Harvest, specifically earmarked for the Burnham deal. He was fully in there. And by the way, he was going to sell his broker dealer to Burnham, which makes him vested in the Burnham criminal conspiracy, about as vested as a person can be. But at the end of the day, his father's the president, and nobody in the FBI wants to lose their job over that, and they're just not going to push it.
So it's more than just his face on it.
Way more. Listen,
I just want to make that clear.
Well, they want to say that because that was their excuse. Well, they used the name without him knowing. Listen, how did he not know he was on emails? He got emailed that brochure with his name on it. How did he not know? And then he raised money in China for the deal. He was going to sell his broker dealer to the deal. I mean, this is a guy fully vested in benefiting from a criminal conspiracy. And by the way, just so we're clear, normally in a conspiracy case, it doesn't matter whether he knows it's a criminal conspiracy or not. You're still guilty.
Ignorance is not an excuse for breaking the law.
Yeah.
You're liable to understand what your action, like that's why you sign on the dotted line.
And it's just in this situation with Heidi, that laptop could have been very, very key. And it's a little more understandable why he demanded it and was so adamant about getting that back.
Yes, he was not concerned for her at all.
Right.
Archer, guys. Archer, let's talk about his sentencing. So he keeps putting it off, right? It could very well be because Archer just simply can't face the reality that he might face jail time. But listen, I mean, Ronnie Abrams, who's the judge, was appointed by Obama. Okay, her husband Greg Andreas was a former prosecutor that was on the Mueller report, right? So she is in the heartland of the Democratic power. There is no way she's going to give Archer anything severe. She already gave his partner only 3 years. I'm expecting a probation sentence, to be totally honest with you. As far as the what's going on with the posturing, I really think that might have something to do with the money, guys. Archer is a man of means. He has millions of dollars. I'm not making it. I think I read a net worth of $4 million. He's got a fine to pay now, right? So I'm sure that is part of the issue with the posturing. But I expect a gutless decision from Ronnie Abrams, just like when she tried to reverse the decision. So you put it off, but in the end, the guy's going to get probation, in my opinion.
Wow, that's shocking.
See, play it out. Yeah. So Astro has a really good question. So what's your take on the $250K that was given to Heidi, essentially, outside of her employment, and the other fund giving her money as well? So do you know about that?
No, I mean, if you can give me some more details on it, maybe I can opine on it.
I believe it had to do with the MDMD case. Mm-hmm. If you don't know about that, then it might be a little hard to answer.
So Heidi had a company in her name, and in the it was a company called MVMD, and they were investing in alternative medicinal therapies, and they invested, and I can't remember which exact. Was it VPAT? It wasn't VPatch. It was some other company that she created that was very, very short-lived. And within their document, their proposal document, they said that they were allocating $250,000 to her company. And we know
that was a stock scam. Okay, that makes more. Yes.
Brand
Wellness. Yeah, that was the company that her name was on.
Mm-hmm. Well, guys, so the listener just said it all. Stock scams are something we didn't really get into. And actually, we didn't even really get into the money manager scam, but maybe I can come back and talk about both of them.
Yeah, we'll do that next time.
I mean, the stock scams, pump and dumps, were the main thing that these financial fraudsters did for a long time. MVMD was a stud. There it is. The money manager scam is a different level. It's something my father got into. Part of the reason is because the money manager scam is really harder to defend, guys. You're really getting into the guts of it. It's if I can make a little comparison, if the stock scams are dealing marijuana, the money manager scam is dealing with heroin.
Mhm.
So a lot of people probably shy away from that, but these stock scams, these pump and dumps are typical. And who knows why Heidi was allocated the money? Maybe Sugarman allocated it to her as a way to avoid taxes.
Okay.
So that's like a stepping stone. Like for some people, would you say that's a stepping stone into larger scale, criminal
It's
activity? Like,
it's look, it's the most common crime. I mean, Tommy Gambino, the boss of the LA crime family, that's his main thing. We all saw Wolf of Wall Street, right? I mean, that was what he did. He sold pump and dumps. He was a salesman mainly, but that's what he did. And what this listener just said, that's why I mentioned it. That 250 grand may have been a gift from Sugarman.
hmm,
Hey, stay strong.
wow.
Wow.
So we have this question. How do you feel about the team here bringing in journalists like Jonathan Stempel from Reuters,
Yeah. I've
who
been
wrote
asked
about
this
your
a couple
brother,
times actually.
yeah, father and Sugarman on the tribal scam? Could journalists help Heidi now? My guess is yes. Anything that brings
I
to
hope
light
so.
Heidi's
Yeah.
situation, as long as it's done in a respectful, sensitive way. But, what do you think?
No, I think what you think, Mal. Listen, I'm so thankful you guys keep the light shining on this. And through Heidi, it's unveiled all this other criminality. But if we get people from Reuters, that it can go worldwide. And people can actually see these organized criminals for what they are. People want to talk about organized crime, they think about broken legs. Guys like Sugarman and my brother, they're organized criminals, a lot more organized than those guys are. That's what they do. They rip people off professionally for a living.
I think Mo and I are making efforts to make some strides in that direction. So
Well, and
Good.
maybe we
it's
could
about
potentially,
yeah,
if no one else has any questions, we can cap it off with that.
yeah.
Is
Go ahead.
we have some really exciting news. We've had a couple meetings so far. We can't talk too much about what's going to happen, but we are in the beginning stages of, partnering with some people to create a documentary around this.
Yes.
And it will happen sooner than later, likely before the case is even solved. So we're going to make sure that this becomes not just a way to help Heidi and get more resources to be able to do that, but also to shine a light on other things happening in the world that are very similar to this. So hopefully fewer people will get away. Whatever happened, we'll figure it out. We'll find out. The police is not going to let this, become silent. Even in a lot of on Reddit or web sleuths or all the other pages that typically are updated, every minute you refresh the page.
Right.
There's more things. Nothing, zero on Heidi. And it's extremely concerning. And so, to your point, Derek, I think they're absolutely hoping that no one's going to ask about the landfill search, that all the tax dollars that went funneling towards that, all for naught, And now we know that there are tons of,
Oh my
other
goodness.
issues that are preventing, like her car isn't with police. It's in a private towing lot, this, and they haven't interviewed half of the people who I'm sure know what happened. We have on very good reference that they likely know exactly what happened in that building. So
We did
all
submit
that
some
to say,
information to them yesterday, and
mhm,
hopefully they'll be following up on that. But either way, we're just getting started as far as really getting this information and getting um, this topic some attention.
and not
I'm
forgetting it.
so thankful to you guys, and please stay on it. I feel like I've been screaming alone in the forest for so long, and now this has happened, and it's tragic. And at least it's going to hopefully bring light to all of the yuck that's underneath.
Yes.
Yeah, well, let's stay in
Hopefully.
touch because I think your voice would be very helpful in a documentary like this, given you
I'm
were
here
on
for
the
you guys.
inside.
You guys just let me know.
You got it. We'll fill you in a little
Thank you
bit.
so
We'll fill you
much.
in a little bit later. But yeah, we're
Okay,
really
guys.
excited. Okay. Whew.
Yeah. This has been great. I really appreciate your time, Derek, especially the extra time that no one got to hear, but we learned so much. Don't worry, everyone. You didn't miss anything. We repeated what we said.
Derek, thank you so much.
Yeah.
We value, your time with this every time, and we can't wait to have you back again and go even deeper. And thank you. Your insight, your insight is truly, truly helpful to so many people, I think, and it also brings a greater understanding of what's really going on.
Mm-hmm.
So
Great. Thank you, guys. I'm here. You let me know when you want to do another one.
You got it.
Will do.
All right. All right, everybody.
All right,
Good night.
everyone.
Thank you so much, and I'm sure we'll be back on soon. Stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
Love you guys all.
Bye.
Bye.